All right. Hi, everybody, wherever you are tuning in from. Happy New Year. I hope you are all staying safe and have had the opportunity to rest, reset, recharge, and ready to take on this already crazy year, 2021. If you don't know me, I'm Rana Kaliouby. I'm co-founder and CEO of Affectiva, and author of Girl Decoded. We are on a mission to humanize technology. And today I'm so excited to have this conversation around one of the uses of our technology, specifically in filmmaking. If you know us, you know that we have a media analytics business, and that business is primarily focused on deploying our technology in the understanding of how audiences respond to content. It's primarily used in advertising testing, but what's less known about our technology is that it's also used by creatives and filmmakers as they are iterating on their creative content, as they're thinking about what's going to resonate the most with their audience. And so today I'm super excited to have Graham Page, who you may have met before. He's our global managing director of the media analytics business at Affectiva. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Rana. Hi, everyone.
And award-winning creative director and filmmaker, Chris Wenger. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'll give you both an opportunity to introduce yourselves as well. Graham, why don't we go with you first, and then we'll take on Chris.
Thanks, Rana. So hi, everybody. As Rana said, I'm Graham Page. I run the media analytics division here at Affectiva. So that's the part of the business focusing on helping advertisers and content creators optimize and create the best content that they can, based essentially on the understanding of people's instinctive, emotional, and cognitive reactions to their content. So, we do a lot of work, which I'll talk a bit more about in a moment, helping brands, but also helping filmmakers, as Rana said, kind of understand really if people are reacting to their content in the way that they intended, and making optimizations based on that. So yeah, looking forward to hearing more about Chris's story and how we work together today.
So over to you, Chris. Tell us about your background and also how you came across Affectiva.
Yeah, I'm Chris Wenger. I'm originally from Switzerland, but I moved to the beautiful country of Finland. It's almost 22 years ago, actually. And yeah, I'm a freelance filmmaker. I haven't always been. So about 6 years ago, I left my day job as a marketing manager in the tech industry. The company called F-Secure. I've been in various positions there, but the latest one was marketing manager. Left that out into the blue and made my passion, filmmaking, my profession. So I grew up in an artistic family, my mother being an actress. So I was around in creative environments all my life and finally returned to it. So that about myself. And yeah, I'm out there. I'm on a mission to help businesses to create human experiences. I like the word Rana, humanize technology. So to create human experiences, to not only reach screens, but to win over hearts and minds. So this is kind of my slogan I use out there, and
I love it.
I'm heavily into this, and this is also how I came across Affectiva, because I needed to find a way to measure emotions, what emotions films, but also commercial work is creating. And I came across first actually a competitor of you. We don't mention that here now, but then actually I ended up at Affectiva because you offered this wide open system with a scientific background. And yeah, that's how it started. And that's where we are now.
One of the things that struck me with how you describe your work, creating human experiences, that resonates with us a lot at Affectiva, because even though we are an AI company and we're in the business of building kind of artificially emotionally intelligent machines, if you like, to me it's all about the human to human connection and how can we make that connection better, whether it's in the real world or it's in a digital experience. So I love what you're doing. So tell us about 3 Pills, and we're all going to watch it together in a few minutes, everybody. So hang tight. But yeah, it's won a bunch of awards. The Berlin Sci-Fi Festival, you won the Best Director Award. It was nominated for the Best Actress Award. It premiered as a feature short at the Film Shortage, which is an online cinema showcasing the best short films, and a boatload of other film festivals. So, which is amazing, right? And I know you're very humble and you don't like to brag about that, but it is an amazing feat. So
it's a nice thing, especially when you hear somebody else talking about it. So it's like it's a team effort. I'm coming a little bit later to this, still, like how I see the role of a director today, but it's a huge team effort. It's a very short film, and maybe going to a little bit of the background how this all came together. I tend to do micro short films. I try to every year actually do some fiction, some personal work besides my commercial work, and Three Pills is one of them. And it was last actually in 2019 in summer. I had a discussion with my mother. My mother is actually the lead actress in Three Pills. So this is so we had a discussion, and we often talk about creative ideas on the phone, and Three Pills kind of came out of one of these discussions, and we just said, hey, let's do it. This is a self-funded project, so gather the team together, and we really wanted to make this one special. And I told you earlier about my background as a marketing manager and in the tech industries. I have basically my whole adult life, when I was in working environments, been using agile methodology, been in the software industry, so kind of inspired from there. I always, when I started working in the film industry and working in the production process, I always thought it's kind of limiting the linear production with pre-production, production, post-production. So that's kind of how this all grew out. I wanted to make to explore agile filmmaking with Three Pills. So it had to be short, it had to be snappy, and it was the perfect story for it. And that's how we ended up kind of creating it.
Now, I won't give it away. We're going to watch it in a few minutes, a few seconds, hopefully. But it is very timely, and it touches on this whole pandemic. So did you start it before the pandemic hit?
Actually, still in 2019 in the summer. We actually shot the film before the pandemic. It started already, but it wasn't really present in our heads. So no, the story was actually not because of the pandemic, but it is this haunting parallels to the pandemic. Actually, while we were in post-production, the pandemic hit in Finland as well. It got clear that how spot on this whole thing was very relevant suddenly.
Right.
And it wasn't wanted. So saying that, we were almost a little bit surprised by that, and we're actually thinking, is it now cliche because people think we did it just because of the pandemic? But it was a complete coincidence.
That's interesting, amazing. All right, shall we watch?
Yeah.
Then
let's do that. Let me share my screen. I've got it queued up, and we'll go from there.
An Affectiva team, in case sometimes it's choppy playing video over these live streaming platforms. So Affectiva team, if you can just also post the link in the chat, that would be great.
Great. Okay, so you should be able to see this, and here we go.
muss ich Platz machen. Menschen brauchen Nahrung, Wasser, Luft. Sie haben Recht auf ein Leben, eine Zukunft.
Very profound. So tell us what emotional journey did you want to take the viewers on? And then I'll let you and Graham have a conversation on how our technology was able to help.
It's interesting that you asked that question, because actually it was from the very beginning I was thinking about the purpose, why we do this. And I mean, we all know the demographic shift is happening. We are, and I say that maybe also with a little bit of pain, we are in a moment where we are starting to divide old and young, and especially now in the pandemic. Often we start to see the old as almost as a burden to society, and we wanted to make a film which is different than most. We didn't want to do a science fiction film which is bragging with effects and needs them to move along to create emotion. So we wanted to actually create a nostalgic experience that captures the audience from the very first moment. And what was really important for me, even though I should maybe once do a feel-good movie as well, but we wanted to have a high mental effort, high mental processing, mentally challenge the audience. We knew that this is going to impact, or we guessed, we know that how much this is shared and how many views this gets. But it was important for us to create a film that mentally challenges and creates a lasting emotional impact. And I think we come still a little bit to the emotional testing, but it also we got some insights there on that end. But it's I'm inspired by Film Fantastic and by also by the Italian Giallo. So it's very difficult to put this film into a genre. It's like some call it a drama, some call it horror drama. Some I've heard science fiction. I've heard various different, and it's very interesting to hear how people experience this film.
Absolutely.
But what we hear from people quite often is that how intense, how long it felt in a very short moment, and the attention to detail, to the shot, to the close-up shots, etc. And that was an amazing opportunity. I had to work with one of the best Finnish video pieces. So it's like director of photography.
So Graham, we get an email from Chris, and he needs help kind of understanding, how different elements of his creative engages his audience or hits the right, I guess, emotional and mental tone. What do we do about this?
Yeah, like I can share a little bit about kind of what we do in general, and then Chris and I can talk a bit about this particular case. So obviously, the technology, and again, I hope many of you are aware of our technology, but if not, I'll explain. The technology is really optimized to help understand how people are reacting to content and to ideas. So what we do typically in the research that we do is we'll show content to an audience who are the appropriate audience for that content. With their consent, we ask if we film them, so we ask if they mind being filmed while they watch. And then our technology allows us to understand the emotional state and the cognitive state that people are in based on the expressions they show on their face. So our algorithms are taking that video of them watching the content, coding for all sorts of different states and expressions. So, at a basic level, are people engaged and really showing any expressions, or are they kind of sat there like a bump on a log, or are they showing positive expressions or negative expressions? But we can go really deep into the nuances of those expressions. So are people showing brow furrows and frowns? Are they showing smiles? Are they showing joy or fear or anxiety? Those are things that really are important, I guess, particularly in the filmmaking context, to help filmmakers and I guess more broadly advertisers and anybody creating content understand if the the reaction in the audience is the one that was intended. So there's no sense here that what we're trying to do is say, hey, this, this is a good or a bad film based on some kind of simple mechanistic view of what's a good or bad experience. Really, what we're trying to do is help content creators understand, did you get the reaction that you wanted at that moment? Because every single scene, every single part of the script is has been carefully shot and selected and has a purpose. What we want to try and do here is help filmmakers understand if that purpose was achieved based on the audience reaction. So that's what we do. And kind of Chris got in touch with us and shared some of the challenge that he had, and we then ran a project together to see if things were working as intended. But Chris, why don't you tell us a bit more about the specific challenge that you were interested in investigating, and then I can share a little bit of the results.
Yeah, no, I may be picking it up. I told you guys earlier that I'm not so fond of the traditional production process with pre-production, production, and post-production, because it's quite static and it often gives you the answers you need too late or never or by the wrong people. So for me, it's really important that real audience, I get feedback, emotional feedback from real audience, and I wanted to scale this somehow. I didn't, in-person meetings are still very good, but I wanted to have something which we can do online in the cloud. And yeah, so in order to know to improve the story together with both crew and also with the audience, I decided to, or I actually always do, so-called prototypes. I started this project with I call them sound designed concepts. So they are usually black screen. There might be script, there might be some screenplay, sometimes some shots, but there is music, sound, the feeling, and it helps me to onboard not only possible investors, like we had some people helping us in this field, which giving us equipment, etc. But it also helped me to, in early stage, motivate the crew, but also already on board or find fans and audience, which I then later on also used in emotional testing. But we also used completely random people, which we didn't know, because I always say the real feedback, in this case, of course, it's subconscious micro expressions, but the real feedback you should get not from your mother or from your friends, but from the people out there. But that's how we got into this. But the real problem at hand was that I told you that I see the work of director a little bit different than many others. I think the director should have a vision, should have a leading role, but I think it's very important that the director enables. So I try to onboard my crew as early as possible and make them actively participating in crafting the story. And it was actually the sound guy, which composed this music, is composed, which surprised me. Actually, took me off guard. I had a concept cut, as I just told you, with the sound design, etc., and everybody loved it, and the audience also. And he came and threw in something completely new. And it was not love at first. I was like listening to it. It was so different. So it was disturbing. It had these sounds in this. You just heard it yourself, like this visceral, these screeching sounds. And I was just starting to get where I loved it. I showed it to a couple of close people. Then I showed it on. And people were always like, "This is intense." And I just couldn't take the risk, because I had this original idea, and then came this, which was a change of plan a bit, like the iterative approach. And I wanted to test it. And this is actually where I started searching for a solution, how to test it, and came across Affectiva. And yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so the question was, basically, you've got the sound effect, or sound, or I don't know what the technical term is, that you wanted to use, and it was kind of, you were intrigued because it's intense, but at the same time, it has this visceral kind of reaction.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the question was, okay, how would a broader audience respond to it? I actually think this is really interesting, because we have a lot of people tuned in from all over the world. Spencer is from St. Louis in the US. And he actually is referencing, I guess, Midnight Sky, which I've not seen. But Spencer, you're saying you found the score distracting and out of place. So that's exactly like what we're talking about. How can you test the resonance of all these elements of the creative? yeah, very interesting. All right, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, was this a real comment now from a participant? So that's exactly what I'm after. Is like, because I mean, if you want to do, I say never go into the middle. Always go extreme. You will. Some people will not like it. Some people will like it. But I don't want to go right into the middle. And I think this is a little bit the problem we have also in today's advertising. Like it's gotten too, like, I almost don't dare to say it, performance oriented, and we go in the middle so that we are not going in one. We cannot dare to test and go extreme anymore. And exactly this, I said to myself, no, now you're not, because I also was so close to already saying, pulling the plug and saying, no, we go with the original plan.
Uh-huh.
But then we started the test, and the actual test was 2 identical cuts. There was a small difference always. So in one of the cuts, so they were exactly the same. We had the music and we removed the screeching sound. It's a very subtle difference. And I don't know, Graham, are you gonna go into that still going now into this? But what I wanted to say is I got different reactions. Some hate it, some like, but it would be interesting to actually have been able to monitor their reactions, how they react to the actual the actual sound. What are their emotions? And I think, yeah, it's interesting because it's just data as well. But I also get from the other end, people love it. People, I think I'm still exploring. I have used this now the first time. This emotional testing, this technology. There's a lot of things maybe I would do different now. There was huge challenges getting people actually taking part because they were worried about the word AI. I realized I shouldn't use the word AI too much.
Right.
And then there was the pandemic. The network was slow at times, and we had issues, technical issues, and that. But I still say this. It gave me really, really valuable insight in terms, and I'm not going into it because I would like to hand the word to Graham because you are the expert. So this is new land for me as well.
Yeah, sure. Let me share the results, Chris. Then I'd love to hear more about kind of your thoughts and experience and what you did differently. So I'll just share again. Just bear with me.
And everybody, while we're teeing this up, if you have questions, please ask away, and I'll start tackling them.
Okay. And one thing I realized when the film was ongoing, I don't know if the sound was completely, but it is. So I really strongly suggest you guys go to the link and watch it again with a headset, because at least for me the sound didn't work, and it was very stop motion like the stream. So go and check it out. But I don't think.
Yeah, I want to make sure that we've definitely done justice to your film, Chris. So yeah, I would totally.
It's always when you look as a director or creative at your film, and it's somehow looking different than normally, you get like this cold shivers.
Quite no, and yeah, we definitely want people to see it in full. If people didn't see the sound quality in the way it was supposed to, but yeah, just wanted to briefly talk about the results. So as Chris had said, we did a classic A/B test. Really, we had Chris had created 2 edits of his short film, one with that really visceral sound effect, one without it, but by and large, otherwise the visuals are very, very similar. So we recruited two groups of people to watch the film.
This is online, right? Like these are people watch. Like describe how people are watching it.
Yeah, so they were recruited in an online environment. So they then watch the film in a pretty naturalistic way on their computers or mobiles. And again, as we said, we would we obviously got their permission to film them, and then ran their expressions as they watched the content through our algorithms to generate this kind of data. So what I'm showing here is just a simple graph showing a particular aspect of their emotional response. So here we're focusing on brow furrow responses. So people, people kind of like lowering the brows, which indicates tension. It indicates kind of mental effort as well as Chris was seeking. And you can see there is a really interesting difference between the two edits. So in the kind of gray line at the top, you've got the brow furrow from people that watched the version with that kind of screeching sound effect. In the green line, you have people who watched the film without that sound effect.
But it didn't have sound, right? Just a question from the audience.
Yeah, so everybody could hear the sound. So the soundtrack, it was a naturalistic viewing experience of the film. So people can hear the sound if it was there, and if it wasn't there, then obviously they didn't hear it. But so yeah, for clarity, it's 2 edits of the film, both with a soundtrack. The only difference in that soundtrack is that one of them had that kind of screeching sound effect as the kind of the scanner light is shown, and one of them did not. But otherwise very similar. So what was interesting and clear here was the difference in the intensity of that emotional experience as people watched. Chris, you were saying that so people said to you, hey, that was intense, and certainly the facial data kind of back that up. You can see that there are 2 key moments kind of where that sound effect is played. It's kind of early on, and then later on in that kind of morgue scene, and you can really see that kind of, I guess, that kind of air of that sinister air that sound effect gives the film really did lead people, I think, to lean in more into the early parts of the film. There's a lot more brow furrow expressions in those early scenes as people are trying to understand what's happening. And then again, you've got during that morgue scene a really heightened level of brow furrow and emotional intensity. So we wrote a whole deck with Chris about this. We won't go into this on the live stream here, but just as a kind of headline example here, you can see that the version that had that sound effect was more emotionally intense. It's not necessarily a pleasant experience, and that's I guess your intent, Chris. So I'll hand back to you in a moment to talk a bit more about
no. This is
whether this is what you wanted, but this is clearly we could see there was an emotional difference, and I think it helped you understand what was the best route to go in terms of the final version. So I'll stop sharing, and Chris, hand back to you to talk a little about what you did with that.
So the thing is, what I always say, this is I'm just in the exploring phase still, because it would be wrong to say that I would blindly trust this emotional data. It's an additional data source for me, and it opened up a lot of opportunities. As we speak, I'm actually still ongoing. I told you earlier, I think in circles. It may be that I'm still updating this film.
Amazing.
With some when I get new insights, because I think it's going to live hopefully forever in the net. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is, at least now when this is a zero budget project, which I have fully in my hands, or we have in our hands, we want to transform it and feed in new information. So right now, the first thing is we launched the film with the squeegee sound. So that was, of course, the first thing, and we felt actually more confident. It was really painful for me that time to wait for the results and to be open, because yes, we did get other comments from viewers saying that, ooh, was hard. But when further discussing with those people, I had this opportunity to even personally had conversation in chat or even with some personally after the watching, and really verify how they felt like about the film, and they watched it sometimes again, they processed it, and they came back to me and they talked about the film later still, like weeks later. Like, oh, I got one comment from an older gentleman, I think he's 65, and he said to me, painfully beautiful. Mm-hmm. And this was a really amazing, nice, it's a compliment for me, because we wanted to have this, it's very dark. As you may have realized, I like dark. I like but I wanted to make it beautiful. And this is maybe also the reason why in the end, I think it was the right choice to go with this almost like, it's this classical, it's almost like a music, I wouldn't call it a music video, but it's almost like a piece of music. The music is really much now in the center point, and actually gives it this contrast, and I love it, because everybody, if I would play you the music we had originally, my sound design, or the sound designer, he said that this was quite normal, cliche, common for those genre films. So why not? That's probably was his idea, and he surprised me, and he understood the vision fully, and I'm happy we went that way. So that was the most important thing, was to have the confidence to go ahead with it.
Right.
Yes, there was some comments here and there, and then the next thing also was, and this is more like other data sources, like I realized I did a micro short film, The Follower. You can also watch that. It's horror. It's this giallo Italian, also very dark social media horror. And back then, I also used some prototyping. I used a concept with, like I called it, the sound design concept to onboard crew. We shot it on a much smaller budget with DSLR cameras. But when I look back, I think I didn't know exact numbers, but it was probably 30, 40 festivals, and we got into 5. And with this one here, I of course selected more carefully because I knew it was a more genre-specific film. So we selected them, and we had right now I think it's 9 festivals. Amazing. And I don't know the exact number, and we got into 5, and still some are ongoing. So there's a clear. I don't want to again. I don't say it's because of the emotional AI testing, but it gives that extra confidence that it was the right choice.
And Chris, I think we'd certainly go along with the thought that this is a data point, right? I mean, it's absolutely not designed to give a a simplistic answer. Clearly, you're the filmmaker. It's a collaborative process with your crew, as you said. What we hope we can bring is an additional data point that's perhaps a little different to just the kind of conversations that you can have with people as you show it to them as part of that development process. So I think we'd certainly go along with that. But again, also I think it adds a little an extra dimension that perhaps is not always available, which is that real kind of in the moment reaction that you can't always see without being in the room with the person, right? So hopefully it's a helpful additive data point, but obviously clearly not the whole story.
So we have a lot of questions actually from the audience. So first of all, just a clarification on how we do the testing. This is basically we send a survey link out to an audience, to a person, and the person watches it on their device, and then we aggregate the results. But Graham, there's a question on whether we ever do this in a group testing context.
Okay. So
I'll answer that.
Sure. I can answer that.
Why would we ever do that? Why would we do a kind of more of a focus group?
Well, so there's a couple of things there. I mean, there is no reason why you can't record a group of people watching this kind of content and then do exactly this kind of work. So if people want to do this sort of work in different ways, we can certainly accommodate that. There's probably 2 points around that. One is just kind of from a sheer practicality point of view, it's particularly in the current climate, sending this to research panels or people audiences that you have through another means to watch in their own home is clearly a lot easier right now. It's pretty hard to get people together and do it in a venue. So clearly there's some advantages to doing it that way. Plus also, I guess, if you're watching something alone, there's less of the, if you like, the collective impact of other people. It's a more personal reaction that you're measuring as well. So I think there are some advantages to doing it in just kind of sending it direct to people. But certainly, if people want to simulate a full audience, that's possible to do, but obviously a little bit hampered by the lockdowns and so on that we face a lot of at the moment.
We are seeing increased interest in this kind of movie theater testing use case as well, which is hard to do during the pandemic, but we expect that to ramp back up after.
Absolutely, because obviously the technology, works with a webcam, but also it can work with, kind of near infrared cameras and so on. So you can, if you get again the right permissions, you could record an audience in a movie theater watching, a big screen film as well, and obviously that's something that's work that we've explored as well with other clients.
So a super interesting question from Abigail. Hi, Abigail. Thank you for joining. Is the goal of the product to eventually be able to run the test without a live audience?
Can I give my reaction to that, and Chris, then you can to that. My reaction to that is actually that's not my end goal. I think you can do certain things with the coding of content itself, which are really interesting. But for me, films are made for people to watch, and we want to help understand that reaction that the audience have. But Chris, you may have a different view.
No, because we started this with this human experience, and just now, right now, reading a book called Technology versus Humanity from a futurist called Garrett Leonard, and it's it's at least personally myself. It's an interesting question, but I think it will take the humanity. I want to measure the emotional feedback of a life of a real human, and actually even in next projects, I would still want to do those old-fashioned, in person, watching people when they watch my film in a movie theater, at a festival. This all couldn't happen now with 3 pills. Maybe it still happens. I would like to talk with people, see the reaction, and then all these different data sources. That's, I think, together is the power. But humanity is here to stay.
I totally agree. You know what I find super fascinating, Chris, about your approach to creating these films? So in the software world, we used to think about the waterfall model, where you start with a goal and then and you execute the plan. And then, of course, nobody does this anymore. It's more agile, as you said. And it strikes me that you're moving away from this waterfall model for creating content, which I think is what most people still do. And you're applying this agile, like continuously iterating on the product. And I think that's just so fascinating. It's very cool.
I'm inspired by many filmmakers. Or not many, but there are filmmakers out there. There are film studios out there which use this already. But where I don't see it is in, for example, in commercial, because the problem is right now the commercial work is so much performance driven. It has been really hard, and that, as a creative, to convince brands. I mean, of course, there's still the big brand films and productions, but it's such a huge competition, and somebody wins it and then gets the whole cake. So for us small ones, I think this is a potential for me to enter again and to say to decision makers, hey, why don't we test something? We don't need to produce all the bang in the beginning, but it's also not a performance testing. It's an emotional testing. So you will not get like facts on how many have clicked and that. That's not the point. So the point is long-term impact, long-term brand building, and I see emotional testing to be, or emotional AI to be, a really crucial part of this. At least in my plan, to use it also for commercial work. But for right now, it's really hard to get listened at in meetings, at pitches, because you might actually lose the gig when you start talking that stuff, because it's you get those answers. You are the wrong guy for us. So it's like, but I test this now in my own projects, in my own work, and can't wait for the next film. And maybe people online, I don't know how many are online. If you want to see more, we got the question, was this a trailer? Quite often, actually, was this one scene? And in a way, it is a small scene of maybe something bigger. And we are actually now, maybe as a next step, thinking of launching I don't call it pre-production, but launching a small research, and whether we could build something on top of this. So let me know. You can also follow me on Twitter, on all kind of social media channels. I'm not going to do any advertising. You find me, or then you don't.
Follow Chris. I actually, like you said, I thought it was a trailer for something bigger, and I remember asking Graham, and he said, "No, that's it." Really fast. I think, which is interesting, right? It means that people are kind of yearning for more. They're like, "Wait, what? Like, tell me more."
Yeah, there are some unanswered questions in that film, right, Chris? That a lot of people.
I don't know how much. Sorry, now cut. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sorry, I said there are some unanswered questions in that film that I think a lot of people will want the answer to. So I can see that interest.
So, question: as a composer and a neuroscientist, I'm wondering how universal this reaction to sound actually is. Did you have testers across different ages, different cultures? Some sounds may elicit different emotional responses depending on the cultural and personal experiences. And I saw a different question that's kind of similar from Dr. Rakesh. Hi, thank you for joining, which is more around, what's the diversity of the audience that we kind of recruited to watch this?
Cool. Sorry, go ahead, Chris. I'll answer a couple of questions on that.
This was a first of a kind for me. We went in with a lot of own, effort, trying to find people, but it was a diverse audience. There was people from Asia, there was young and old, the audience, the group wasn't massive, and this is maybe the only thing. Next time we learn, we do bigger. It was really hard. We had a big group, but we had people being afraid. It was pandemic. They had no place where they could focus. It was really tough to get people watching. We in the end managed to gather around 80 people. More would have been better, absolutely. I want to be fully honest. It is one data source. We should have more. More is better. But it was diverse. Yeah, there was people from US, Asia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We had all kinds of.
Yeah, and that's right, Chris. I mean, like, I think there's, more is always better, but I think there was still some clearly interesting patterns in there, and the difference between the edits was clearly big enough to be very meaningful. I mean, there were some differences. Just off the top of my head, I seem to recall men were actually more, showed that a stronger brow furrow, a more emotionally intense response to the film than women did, which I think is a really interesting pattern. We often see actually in some of the more commercial work we do that women tend to be more expressive than men. So that's an interesting pattern to see in this particular case. So yeah, there were differences. To answer the question in another way that came in, I think absolutely you'll see differences in response to content across cultures and across individuals. And so really the question that you can answer with this, I guess, is among the people that I'm trying to speak to, am I getting the response that I intended? But clearly the same content won't create the same response in different markets. It may well be that it something plays much better in one market than another, even if the content's the same. And the more feedback you get, the more, for instance, you can use technology like this, the clearer those pictures become. But we certainly see in other work that we do that the same content can produce wildly different responses because it's interpreted in different ways and it's speaking to a different cultural context.
Totally. Great. So I'm going to start wrapping up. Chris, if there are other kind of creatives and filmmakers who are tuned in today, what's your advice to them in terms of how they can make use of this technology?
I would say just be brave, go out, test it. I think it's you need to do it to learn it, to experience it yourself. And maybe my advice is not to get into the trap. Like there's always when something new comes out that there's a lot of naysayers and this is there. The internet is full, the web is full of people who don't believe in emotional AI, facial coding, etc. But I think it's about the openness, testing it. It's as I said, it's one source. So my advice is go test it. On your next project, it's not. I was also first afraid this is a massively big, project which only is for big Hollywood-style movies. But actually, that's not the case, and that's what I learned in this project, and I will certainly use it again. But just test. I think learning by doing, because I don't want to give advice. I'm learning myself still, as we are here. But
one of the very first things I remember with my co-founder, Professor Rosalind Picard from MIT, one of the first things we kind of thought about when we started Affectiva was we wanted to democratize access to this technology. We didn't want it to be so expensive that only the big studios would have access to it. We really wanted it to be affordable so that, anybody who's creating content could have access to it. So I love that you said that. I also am intrigued by something you said in our prep calls around measuring empathy. So say a little bit more about how you think about empathy and in your film.
I mean, that was a question I think I asked about in five meetings, and it's a really tough one, I know, because it's for me it was I was thinking like the direction we are going now with the pandemics, with empathy is gonna be. I mean, it's our survival. Empathy is the key to everything. And if you could measure it, because I think that's what brands should aim for, like now taking this into commercial side, but also a filmmaker. If you evoke empathy, then I think that would be that was also a question, but probably the answer isn't that simple because probably needs lots of testing, lots of data. But that would be some kind of wish I would have that could be proven, of course, because it's the long-term thinking.
All right, it's our 2021 resolution. I got this. Graham, how about you? What are you seeing kind of trends as we kick off the year in the use of this technology in ad testing, but also in entertainment testing as well?
Yeah, that was really going to be one of my points. I think what was really interesting for us, partly I think fueled by the pandemic, but certainly we saw it a lot through the back half of last year, is the interest and the much greater interest from the entertainment industry in this kind of technology. So we're working with a number of organizations, and there's been real interest in getting to this kind of emotional insight, and partly I think because some of the regular ways of doing audience testing aren't necessarily available to people. You can't bring people together as easily. So a technology that allows people to get feedback that's very naturalistic and diagnostic in the way that hopefully we've showed here, I think is really appealing to people. So yeah, it's been really interesting that we've seen a lot of interest in this from the entertainment industry, and that's been not just trailers, but the content itself, TV, film, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, I'm really encouraged for this year, I think, by the interest in the industry, and I think that to me where this really excels as a technology is in providing that additional data point that Chris talked about. It's not there to create some kind of entertainment by numbers. It's not there to just focus on whether you've got a positive outcome or not. Really, this is about answering the question: did the audience connect with this in the way that you as a filmmaker or a TV producer wanted? And I think increasingly we're getting a positive response to that kind of data as we share it with some of these organizations.
And maybe I have one more, more advice: use it, because then we get the data. Because I think right now, what is really tricky, or what was tricky for me, is when I asked the benchmark. Now this is heavily advertising used with content which creates positivity. So it's this positive balance, and this was of course completely something different, so we can't benchmark it. But the more we take also drama in, and the more we feed, we learn. So that's maybe my advice number one. Let's get the hands dirty and let's use this technology, because then once the benchmark comes in, then it's getting really interesting for us to compare and
I love it. This is an awesome call to action. So people, if you are still tuned in, maybe type in a documentary or a movie or a show or a trailer or whatever that you would like us to test with our technology, and we can see if we can create a friends and family kind of experience and start to get some data. We have people, listening in from India, obviously the US, London, Dubai, Switzerland. So a pretty international audience.
Oh.
Right. But thank you, Chris, so much. We're so proud to have been part of your journey creating the 3 pills, and we look forward to working with you again in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much, because that was a steep learning curve. Still lots of questions, but I'm looking forward to the next project.
We're going to have to test the 3 pills series when you get to that point,
yeah.
right?
I think, the serious answer here is like, we would really love to do this, but I think the next step is really to see whether there would be some investors.
Yeah.
The data, of course, helps.
If there are investors listening in, reach out to Chris. That's awesome. Great.
All right.
Thank you, Graham.
Deals on Netflix. Yeah, we go for it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. You never know. Amazing. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Graham. And everybody stay well and stay safe. Stay connected. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.